Hi guys, Aaron here with Ghost Raptor Gaming and Guns, and if you've ever been excited for something, but then when you got it, it was a little disappointing, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, because spoiler alert, that's kind of what happened with this particular firearm. This is the Beretta PX4 Storm in .40 Smith & Wesson. Now, first things first, what is my relationship with Beretta? I do not have a relationship with Beretta. They didn't send this gun to me or anything like that for testing and evaluation. I purchased this gun used at Bullseye Shooting Supplies in Woonsocket, Rhode Island for $411, including taxes and fees. Now, generally speaking, when you get this gun, which you can still get this gun, new by the way, 9mm 40 or 45, it should come with 3 magazines in the 40 caliber version. They are 14 round mags, and 3 interchangeable back straps. Now, I got the 3 mags, but the original owner must have misplaced those back straps because I didn't get them. It came with one, and it's the one that's on the gun. So I don't know what size it is, but just take note of that for whatever reason if you need to. Now, let's just jump right into it. We're gonna go from front to back, top to bottom, the way I always do it here. Starting with the sights. The sights are a 3-dot variety. They are dovetailed in. It's a pretty typical affair. Here's your front sight. Here's your rear sight right there. And I do have a little bit of an issue with these sights. And the issue is, as you can see, well, it might not come through, but that rear sight notch is really wide. And so there's a lot of light that comes through on these sights. So minute changes to the left or right, you may not notice. Large ones you will, and I think that that could compromise your accuracy. Says me, your mileage may vary. Now, just while we're at the top of the slide, we're clear and safe, by the way. When this gun fires, it has a firing pin block, and you can see it pop out of the slide right there. Every time the trigger is pulled, it will do that. So, very safe gun. Speaking of safeties, here is the decocker safety. It is a type F. So, decocker, and then disconnects the trigger as well. And then after that, flip the safety off. You have a double action, single action transition. The extractor is long. It is fairly thick, and I had no issues with it. Ejection and extraction were 100% reliable. No issues with it. In fact, most of my brass landed in basically a little pile. It was really quite nice. Now, the finish reminds me of an old Mark 23, which is so cool. I really love the finish on this. The Mark 23 originally had a parkerized finish, and then a black lacquer paint was applied over that, and that's what this reminds me of. It's very sleek, slightly shiny, but also very smooth in the hand, which may cause problems with slide manipulation if your hands become wet. That being said, obviously it has slide serrations that help with that situation, but and they are adequate. If you're worried about that, go with the Inox or Enox version, which is a stainless steel model. It doesn't have this finish on it, and that should alleviate that problem. Slide serrations. There are front and rear slide serrations on this gun. They're not that deep. They're kind of shallow, and they are on a slight angle. They're adequate. I don't love them. I don't hate them. They're adequate. Okay. The slide also has some nice scalloping to it, as you can see, to reduce weight and ease for holstering and withdrawal from the holster, which is quite nice. Single slot pick rail here and a dust cover for lights, lasers, and other accessories, etc., etc. Rounded trigger guard, slightly undercut. Here's a memory pad right here, and this is where the disassembly tabs are on each side, but don't worry, if you inadvertently push it down with one side, the gun's not going to spontaneously disassemble in your hand should you fire the gun. You need to push them both down at the same time in order to disassemble the gun, but I'll show that a little later on. So you've seen the decocker safety, the sights, I think I showed you the hammer. If I haven't, it's serrated, it's slightly abbreviated, and it is easy to actuate. No issues there. Another feature besides this finish that I kind of really liked about it was it has a rotating barrel, not a Browning tilting barrel, which I think is super cool. So you'll see here when I retract the slide, there's a little bit of a locking lug right here, and when I retract it, you'll see it turn. Right? That is super cool. And the idea behind that was if the barrel rotates versus tilts, it basically acts as a fixed barrel. The access doesn't change. So the round can feed in straight and should come out straight without being offset, and that's supposed to help with your potential accuracy. Does it? We'll see in just a little while. Now, what I love about the gun, I absolutely love besides that, is this slide release. Slide lock, whatever you want to call it. It is a teardrop shape slightly. It is serrated and it is perfect in pretty much every way. It sticks out just enough for you to catch it, and its placement is perfect. I have, my hands are right on the borderline between small and medium, and I can reach that with my thumb without breaking my grip. So that's really good. And part of the reason why I loved it was if you insert the magazine forcefully, that's what happens right there. What happens is the inertia from you inserting the magazine pushes the gun upward, your thumb kind of sits in the same spot, and then it actuates that slide lock when you do that. So really quick reloads on this guy, will like it a lot. The magazine release is kind of a teardrop shape. It does have a bit of a nib right there which juts out a little more than the rest of it. Not an issue, it's checkered, it's pretty easy to actuate. I don't even really need to break my grip to do that, so that's really cool. They did a good job with that. The frame is smooth on both sides except for a couple little logos. The back strap and the front strap are both checkered, and that's really where the rubber meets the road as far as traction goes, right? So if you have a good textured front strap and a good textured back strap, you're gonna be fine. Anyways, some guys are gonna dislike that. They're gonna want something with more aggressive stippling on the sides, but I didn't have an issue hanging onto the gun. Even though obviously it's a 40 and 40s are very snappy, it wasn't an issue for me. Oh, and by the way, due to that rotational barrel system, the recoil impulse on the 40 was very, very nice. It's actually the softest shooting 40 I've ever fired. You definitely notice it. So it definitely reduces recoil, and it's a pretty soft shooting gun. One other thing to mention, or two other things to mention about the grip. Number one is that at the bottom it is scalloped, so if you have malfunctions, as you can see, and you need to strip out a magazine, it's got scalloping to help you do that, and then the magazine well is slightly beveled right there. Not that I think it really adds or removes anything from the gun, as it's a double stack design, so pretty easy to just insert a magazine on these guys anyways. So let's talk about another aspect that I liked and didn't like at the same time, which is the trigger. Now this trigger, Beretta calls this a constant action trigger. And the idea is that the double action trigger pull is extremely consistent and requires the same amount of force all the way through. And I believe it. There's really no staginess. It's very smooth and it fires, and firing this gun double action mode, at least that first shot, is pretty precise as a result. However, the single action trigger I liked and didn't like. The reason for that is it's a 4-pound trigger consistently. Ask anybody, watch any review, check the forums, they're gonna tell you it's a 4-pound trigger. It is a good trigger as far as weight and pull goes. However, two things about this. Here's your take up, which is not an insignificant amount. We're talking like 5 millimeters there, maybe a little more. I would say about 5 though. And then you have a little bit of mushiness because this is a polymer trigger, so you get a little bit of trigger flex and you can definitely feel it. And then a fairly light break, which is nice. What's not nice is the reset. So again, here's your take up, a little bit of mush, 4 pounds, real nice. But the reset is audible, but not tactile. You don't feel it at all. And then you have take up on the reset, which I didn't care for. Typically, on reset, let's take a look at this CZ P10F real quick. When resetting it, there's the reset, and then if you put any more force on the trigger, it fires. No takeoff. So it is a little interesting to note that this does have that. It does have that take up even after the reset. It's like 2 or 3 millimeters, so not great. And this resulted in some issues while I was shooting the gun, and that's basically because you got to train around it, right? You need to practice a lot with this gun and get used to that trigger system, because if you think you're just going to pull the trigger and it's going to fire and it doesn't, A, you might just get confused at first, or B, this might result in you kind of jerking the trigger and you're going to hit low left. So initially when I was shooting this thing, I was like, man, I'm not hitting a goddamn thing with it. Well, don't get me wrong, I could hit a torso size target, no problem, but it wasn't like I was getting a 1-inch group with it, right? I was throwing rounds and my accuracy was just kind of inconsistent. I was hitting like 4 or 5-inch groups at best, and so I was getting really angry about that. But once I practiced with it, once I hit like the 150 round mark and I kind of figured out what I was doing, I was able to compensate for that, and then my accuracy definitely improved from there. So while I'm talking accuracy, let me just show you a couple targets here. Now, a lot of people had said that these guns are super precise guns. However, I don't think a lot of them own the 40 caliber version. It's mostly 9 and 45, right? And what I read quite a bit on, every time I looked for reviews or I browsed the forums for the PX4 Storm, it was noted that the 40 caliber version was the least accurate version. So I want to get that out there right now. The 9mm version is more accurate than the 40, and the 45 version in particular is supposed to be extremely accurate, like nail-drivingly accurate. I don't have one of those. I only have the 40 version. I'll try to get a 9mm version or a 45 version in the future and do a review on those later on to see if there is a difference. So with that being said, let's take a look at our accuracy. This is me standing 7 yards, bullseye, 180 grain, total metal jacket. And these are literally my best groups. So I was a little disappointed in it. That's like a 2-inch group. That's just over 2 inches. That flyer, that's just me. This is pretty good. This is just over 1 inch, and this is 2 rounds through the same hole. And then I have, again, like a 2-inch group, and then I had one off the paper right over here. And then again, those 2 rounds are pretty close, but then that third one, a little bit of a flyer there, right? So, is the gun adequately accurate for self-defense? Sure. For precision, not so much. Like I said, the CZ-P10F, extremely accurate. Less than 1 inch group is doable with that gun. With this gun, I don't know. Here we go again. This is me, Winchester, 165 grain, full metal jacket, 7 yards standing. And there you go, 2-inch group, 2-inch group, just over 2-inch group. This one, again, a flyer. I think it was just down here. And then again, 2-inch group. So you're going to get about 2-inch groups, and that is with really precise, careful shooting. When I was shooting this gun, it typically looked like this. That's how I had to pull the trigger every single time, and I still only got 2-inch groups. So, and those were my best groups. On average, I was shooting 3 to 4-inch groups with this gun, so I was a little disappointed with the accuracy, but I think it has to do with that kind of mushiness to the trigger, the kind of reset on it, and then that really wide rear notch, I think, really all contributed to what was going on. Now, I could just train a lot more with this gun and get better and better, but like I said, I think the 9mm or the 45 version is really the way to go because they're supposed to be more accurate. With that being said, the gun was 100% reliable. No issues of any kind, no matter what ammo I put in it, and I was pretty impressed with it. It was soft shooting, and if you got to put a bad guy down and you're just shooting center mass, trust me, you're going to put your guy down, no issues. But I would recommend that you practice a lot with this particular firearm if it's going to be your carry gun, which, by the way, this was somebody's carry gun, because when I disassembled the gun, the entire thing was like covered in lint. Just absolutely covered. And speaking of disassembly, let's get into it because it's a really interesting process, and it's also a pretty easy process actually. So what you do here is just drop your magazine, ensure the firearm isn't loaded, point it in a safe direction, and guess what? You don't have to pull the trigger. All you do is you pull the disassembly tabs down on both sides and then push it forward. That's it. No trigger pull required, which is very nice. Next thing you do is you push forward the recoil assembly, which has this interesting little cam block in it. So push that forward and bring it out. And this comes out, generally speaking, together. It is a single captive guide rod, and it has this large washer kind of on the front that interacts with the front of the slide. Not sure why that's so big, but it is what it is. Here is your camming block, locking block, whatever you want to call it. And you can see it's got a little tab on it right there, and that's what actually causes the barrel to rotate, is that little lug right there. It is shaped for the barrel. It will sit up like this, obviously. It's shaped to go around the barrel, and there's a large opening at the front and a small opening at the back. Now the barrel comes out pretty much as it does on any other gun. You kind of have to twist it just a little bit and push it forward, and then you can draw it out. So just a little wiggling there due to that rotational system, but generally speaking, it comes right out no problem. Here's your barrel, by the way, and here's that cam groove in it right there. It's interesting to note that the end is almost like a separate piece the way that it's milled or finished. It's like the stainless steel piece. It's very cool, and it does have a little bit of a feed ramp to it. Now the frame also has a little bit of a feed ramp to it, and I think that this is just kind of a failsafe, honestly, because the way these rounds feed into this gun is they basically feed straight in. You don't even really need this feed ramp, but I think the idea with Beretta was just, if the round nosedives for whatever reason, it'll hit that feed ramp, it'll feed into the gun, and it was just to increase the reliability. And again, I had no issues with it. In fact, Beretta claims that they've shot these guns 150,000 rounds with no failures. I don't know if that's true, kind of a biased place to get your information from, but I haven't heard anything to contradict it either. Everybody says these guns are extremely reliable. So, there you go. Also, here are your tabs, 2 metal tabs, very small ones, on the same spot, both sides, and then there's one back here. Note, when reassembling this, the disassembly lever is up sometimes. You have to make sure you push that down when you reassemble it. Now, reassembly is a pretty standard affair. Insert your barrel, and it will drop right in place. No big deal. Make sure that you put the recoil assembly, the guide rod, into the large opening on the locking block, and as you can see, this kind of recoils like this. It keeps it stable, but that small end comes out that little hole in the back. It is slightly pointed, and that's where it sits, right there. So what you do is you obviously insert your guide rod into that little hole right at the front of the slide right there, push forward and down, and you might have a little finagling, but it should lock in with that barrel, which it just did. Now what you also have to remember to do is hold that locking block up with your thumb when reassembling, because sometimes it might want to drop down, and as you can see, once it's inserted into the frame, pull it all the way back, and you're good to go. Do your function check. Now, you have to be careful with that. Make sure you pull the slide all the way to the rear, because if you don't and you let go, the slide will fly off the gun. Just to make sure it feeds in properly, and then once it does, you're good to go. And again, make sure that decocker safety tab is down. Pull it back. Okay. Believe me, I know, because it happened at least once to me. So make sure you do that and you'll be okay. And again, just do your function check. Good to go. So, I like a lot of things about the gun, and I dislike a couple things about the gun. Now, couple things for it. If I was going to keep this gun, which this particular one I'm not, unfortunately, I have a couple of the guns I have to review, or I want to review, so I'll be trading it. But I would see if I could get like a metal trigger for this gun, or a match grade trigger. And I'm not sure about this, but Beretta did and does sell these guns with night sights, so that rear sight might be a little more narrow on the night sight models. I don't know. You'll have to check that out. But I would definitely replace the sights, and I would probably replace the trigger. Other than that, adequately accurate, very reliable, very soft shooting, and I do think that the rotational system is very cool and definitely aids with keeping that recoil down. Overall, I like the gun. I was just a little disappointed in the accuracy department. And that about does it for me right now. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to contribute a little more to the channel, go ahead and follow me on Patreon. Become a patron. $1 a month goes a really long way to helping with ammunition and targets, especially right now with those ammo prices being so high. So if you like this content, go ahead, follow the link in the description, and support me via Patreon. Other than that, I got nothing. This has been Aaron with Ghost Raptor Gaming and Guns. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good day.